Hello, gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode.
Yeah, you got your book sitting on the table.
Yeah,
here,
I got the book
open.
sitting on the table. I'm going to refer to it.
What page are you on right there?
On page 202.
Just entered midway through a reading of Bob's book.
Yes.
This is part 2.
Yes.
Of
Part
our
2.
Digital Soul.
Yeah.
By Jenny Black and Bob Hutchins.
Yeah. So
I just want to say, like, me and Bob were talking before, and you know, if you're listening, there's a lot you can. Obviously, there's a lot of practical stuff for practitioners in the marketing space in what you're writing about, right? Because learning about this helps us. But there's also the side that we're going to dig into. I'd really love to. You've written 3 books. Mm-hmm. Me and Bob were talking before. Because,
actually 4, but this is
okay. Who's counting?
Yeah.
Who's counting?
Who's counting?
So, whatever. Sorry, 4. But there are a lot of people that aspire to write a book that never do.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
And I think that would be a really good thing. So if you're listening, that we're gonna break that down. I imagine there's people listening that are like, I would love to write a book. I don't know how, or I don't want to. It sounds painful, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And
all those things can be true.
They can be, but they can be true about a lot of things. I think it's built up more than it actually is.
It's much easier to do and write a book today than it has ever been. And I think every business leader and agency owner or solopreneur should do it. And we can talk about the different reasons.
Yeah. So we'll get into that after we finish breaking down the content. We'll get into the process, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So last episode, we talked a little bit about the genesis and, you know, what the book is about. And I know, Brad, you had some further questions and thoughts as you've had a week in between to think about it. So
yeah.
So I'll pass it over to you.
Oh, well, you know, I think the last session we talked about the challenges that we all have. And I think we all know the challenges. We dove into those a little deeper and unpacked that. But I think one of the things is that I'm always looking at is, okay, then what is the solution? Like, what are ways that we can, that are proven, that we've seen, that you guys seen, that that have helped in this area, things that we can do specifically, or how do we heal what's there? And how do we prepare ourselves for the future when we know this isn't going away? It's just going to get worse. Like, how do we proactively, as parents, as ourselves, how do we proactively protect ourselves from the negative things that come out of, you know, this digital life that we have and screens and stuff? And so I just wanted to unpack that a little further.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of ways to answer that. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, actually was a professor at a local university. And he's in the process of reading the book, and he's really, really enjoying it. And he was saying, I'm anxious to get to the second half where it talks about some practical examples. Yeah. And as we continued to unpack, he was talking about his students in the world we live in today. One of the points that I try to make, and he and I were kind of talking about, was nobody needs to be told today or shamed that they're using technology too much. We all intuitively know that, right? So we don't need another book that says technology bad, unplug. We all feel guilt on some levels of, I'm distracted, I need to be paying more attention to my family or my kids. I can't sit down and read a book for 2 minutes without looking at my phone or being distracted with my watch. All of the things that we all deal with. So that's not, the problem is not we need to be made aware, because at the end of every week, if you're an Apple fan, or if I'm sure Android has the same thing, you get a notice to be like, hey, you've been online this much, you've used your phone this much, and you're like, either yes, I've used it less, or dang it, it hasn't changed at all, or used it more, right?
So what do you guys get the breakdown?
Yeah. I always use these like excuses. I'm like, yeah, but I was doing a lot more business work.
Yeah, no. What's your break? Do you get the breakdown?
I don't look at it too often. Every so often I will, and I kind of know. Like, it's not like I need Apple to tell me what I've been doing, even though I think it does corroborate my issues.
Right.
So to get to your question, rather than saying, okay, here's 5-10 things to disconnect, and the book has that. Okay. I would rather spend the time talking about maybe some of the nuances that are under the cover that we need to really be thinking about that might actually cause us to change. So on page 202 in the book, there's a few things here, and we'll go over them today. And it's about thinking of technology more as, how do I make my use of technology, the creation of technology, more humane? Just like if you think about a bicycle, you have the bicycle exists for you, and you are in control of the bicycle. And so that technology is a humane technology. You get on it, you think about, okay, I'm going to pull the bike out. I'm going to make sure the tires have air. I'm going to use my physical force to go where I need to go. The bicycle is useless without your human interaction, your motion, your physiology. And I think if we think about our technology in the same way, it's like, how can I enter my humanity more into the technology? So the first one is staying human is about less. So if we want to, I'm going to read here. If we want to do or be anything in the real world, we have to narrow choices down to one. So it is about less. If you want to buy a house, you have to choose one. You could look forever at all the great houses, but at the end of the day, you can only live in one at a time. This is the same thing with dating. It's the same thing with all the choices in our life. Require making our own March Madness-like brackets to find the best one, right? But in digital spaces, it's about more. Like creating a Pinterest board for a house you want, there's no end to how many houses, colors, and design inspirations you could plan. And then in the real world, you're healthy when you can accept what exists and what is possible in reality. Relationships improve when you can accept yourself and each other for who you are. So it's about stepping back and going, in the real world, I can't have a billion different options and play with those and research those and dream about those. Successful humanity is about making decisions, sticking with them, and moving forward. And so I think we need to realize that staying human is about less. That's when we become healthy, not when we look at a person who hoards and we go, that's really unhealthy. We kind of do that in the digital world, don't we? We hoard our options. Yeah. We're endlessly scrolling. We hoard our experiences because we want to escape from the limits of human existence.
Yeah, the muscle of decision making is really a muscle that you have to exercise, and I do think I've experienced with unlimited, not only unlimited options, but kind of unlimited ability to keep those options. Like, to your point, like, hoarding, well, in the physical world, like, there's a certain amount of space that you have. In the digital world, it's kind of unlimited space, right?
Exactly.
So where you might be forced to make a decision in the physical world, even if you don't want to, you're forced to, and that's a good thing. In the digital world, you're not really forced to.
The options
unless because Dropbox
endless.
keeps increasing my space every single time.
Right.
No, but I mean, like, that's the kind of thing, right? It's endless. And that decision-making muscle is one that once it's gone, it's really hard to get back. And it's so critical in life, and I think there are other, I'm trying to remember who I've read about this with. I know several leadership books talk about this, but you're happier when you can make better decisions.
Yes.
And when you can make decisions.
Yeah.
So I think thinking through that and being aware of that, go ahead.
I mean, just thinking some practical things in my own life. Like, I think about, I've caught myself, and I've actually now, since I've caught myself doing this, I actually look and I see this happening often. Let's just say I'm out with somebody and having dinner or coffee together, and all of a sudden they look at their phone for some reason. Hey, a second, I got to take this. I find the first thing I do is pick up my phone and start to look at whatever, Instagram, emails, whatever.
It's like a trigger.
It's a trigger. And I caught myself and I'm like, why do I feel the need to pick up my phone when there's a dead space? Why can't I just allow this space to happen and be okay with not having to entertain my mind right now?
Yeah.
And wait patiently for somebody to do what they need to do. Maybe they have a phone call or something they're on. Or
yeah,
email.
That's a great point, because boredom, we've lost the art of boredom. when you're standing in line, what's everyone doing? We don't, and I do this too many times, is we don't want to sit with our own thoughts. We don't want to look around.
Yeah.
And boredom is where is active. It's not passive. What boredom is our brain processing life, its decisions, its thinking through, processing our thoughts. When we don't allow our brains to do that, we're really squeezing out that muscle that you're talking about.
If you will look at a queue or a line of something, some people waiting, let's say there's 20 people in a queue, you look, probably 90% of them, if they're not talking to each other, if they're like not, socializing with somebody else in line, almost everyone else is looking at their phone. Mm-hmm. And so it's obviously a condition that we all feel the need to do, of entertaining ourselves.
Well, your subconscious does process things. This is like, there's tons of kind of research about this. It processes things in those spaces. So if you remove those spaces, so like, for instance, if you have, any problem is like an open loop, right? Your brain's trying to solve it. Like if you give your brain a problem, it's trying to solve it. The times that it solves it are the times when, let's say you're doing the dishes, you're mowing the lawn, you're doing something mundane, even when you're sleeping.
Yeah.
And there's science behind that, right? That subconscious, actually, that's when it kind of does its work.
That's when you resolve things.
When your conscious is not focused on something, that's when those and we all experience that. Like, I know I've talked about it before, but like when you work out, or when you do whatever, like let's say whatever it is that you do therapeutically, like you go out and walk in nature or whatever, you'll get ideas for solutions to problems in your life, right? Mm. This phenomena happens with everybody. And so once you remove that, which I think you're right, like with our phones, we're always occupying our conscious mind. And so our subconscious mind has less of that time.
Yep. Yeah. So staying human is about less. The second one is staying human means accepting limitations. It kind of leads into that. Is in the digital world, we are programmed, and it is a world that tells you there is no limitations. Like, you can get whatever knowledge you want. You can search and learn how to make something happen. You can instantly create a work of art by putting in some words into an AI engine. All of the things that in the real world take time. It takes accepting our limitations in order to create something beautiful, or to write a book, or to write a poem, or just to learn how to plant a garden and then be patient enough to watch it grow. So, I mean, I think if we realize that it's about less and it's about accepting our limitations, I think our brain is being programmed many times to not think that way. So in the digital world, you can do things in an infinite amount of ways in an infinite amount of time, and instantly be in a different part of the world. But accepting your limitations, I think, is a real healthy place to be. So doing more with less, accepting that it's about less is healthier, and accepting your limitations. And then the next one is staying human means coming to terms with mystery and paradox of humanity. I think this is a really important one because, and I'll read from the book, you won't come across many things that are absolutely good or bad. For example, a forest fire is devastating, but it allows for new growth. Many aspects of human relationships and development are also full of mystery and paradox. It's not all black and white, good or bad. However, when you go to the internet, you want answers because that's what it can do. It can help. Digital spaces are black or white, good or bad, Democratic or Republican, pro or con, environmentalist or economist. It must be categorized. When you're in a digital space, everything is divided into either or categories. In real life, you're a mix of things. At least you used to be before you were cornered into opposing sides. Humans are complex. When you're forced to present yourself in these pigeonholes of algorithms, you're required to categorize yourself. When boxes require you to say, I am this or I am that, you're actively creating an identity that begins to define you to yourself and to society, and then it begins to define society. When the digital definition becomes your primary identity, you will miss out on innumerable human facets of who you are that are a program can't translate or compute. It's really important, especially in the day and age that we're living in. And as Americans, I believe the internet is to blame, the algorithms, into the division that we find. Because I think when you sit down with someone, and there's been many people who do this, and you take all of that off the table, you find that you have more in common with people than you don't. But the online world doesn't really allow for much of that.
Yeah.
And
the algorithm continues to promote whatever you start, right? So
it's a binary world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it becomes you become more passionate about one thing and more divided about the other.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think the awareness is always going, wait a second, this is not true about this person.
Yeah.
You know, because when we get online, we're like, that guy's an idiot. I don't even want to be around him. And we're like, well, wait a second. There's more to that person than, you know, what the algorithm is sending me or what they may have said about a particular topic.
Well, it's also
an opinion.
It's also, I mean, we've talked about this before, but it's one of the first places that you can do something, quote, anonymously. Like even if if your name is attached to it or your username is attached to it, there's a lack of effect, right, to whatever you do. I mean, where in real life, you might get punched in the face or something like that, right? If you say something really mean to someone, or you might just feel the weight of how you make that person feel, but you don't feel that online.
And I think that's the thing
which gets worse with this.
It's not just what you're consuming, but it's also how you're presenting yourself, right? Like you said, you can do things that you can't do in the real world because you'll get punched back in the face, or you can be somebody you're not really and portray, something that you're really not. And it's like, it's all, again, in this fictitious world.
Yeah, which is why the metaverse is kind of scary without a feedback loop.
Exactly.
There needs to be some sort
there
of
needs to be like a thing that punches you actually in the face when you do something
like
stupid.
Zap mechanism or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, there was a psychologist who's still alive back in the early 2000s named John Suller, and he wrote about a lot of this early on. And in the book, we talk about some of his theories, but he was the one that came up with the concept of the online disinhibition effect. And what that means is, and there's I think he wrote a whole book about it, but it means that when we're online, we're no longer inhibited, we're disinhibited. And it's the way that I think of it is, imagine if, the movie The Invisible Man, imagine if that were real and we all had that power. That would not make us better people or better society. It would make us go to our worst versions of ourselves, right? When if I had the ability to go wherever I want and I would be completely invisible, that just opens up a whole Pandora's box. That's not reality. And in some sense, it's what we're talking about, right? With the digital world, is staying human means accepting that there is nuances and mystery and paradoxes of two things can be true at the same time, and that people can have opinions that are differing, and we can be best friends, even though we have polar opposite opinions on certain things. And that's okay. That's what being human is about. But his point is, when you can remain somewhat anonymous, because like you said, there's no one to punch you in the nose or no one to call you out, or you don't have to look at them in the eye. It's a lot easier to give some sort of opinion that is not something you would say in real life, or look at someone in the face and go, whatever it may be. So that we have to be conscious that there is that temptation to be and live out a different persona online, or a different avatar, or a different person altogether behind an anonymous identity. That, again, if we were the invisible people or invisible man, would not be a good situation.
Yeah, I think that, the metaverse is going to be like what people think about, like Las Vegas. Like, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Same thing with the metaverse. But is it, I think the challenge is you think we'll see that society will start to live, if they live too much in the metaverse, that they'll start to forget that in reality the same rules don't apply. And that could, I'm just interested to see what type of effects that will have on our society, on our moral some moralities and other things that we already struggle with, so.
Well, I wonder if it's a little bit like, I was talking to my son about this yesterday. I think it was actually related to devices and screen, but it's kind of like that adage, with great power comes great responsibility, which is surprisingly wise. And the case with a lot of things, not just the internet. I think the difference is, so for instance, owning a firearm is like that, right? Is great power, is great responsibility. That is, for most people, very obvious, right? And so there are both things that you have to go through to do that. Same with driving a car, being a doctor. Like there are things you have to go through, and then there's also this common sense awareness in society about it. Devices, the internet, probably because we didn't know or they came in so fast, that is not the case really. So I wonder if, we're just not approaching it, or we haven't approached it yet to that point where we're like, okay, this actually has this power, just like a gun can kill someone. Right? If you didn't know what a gun was, you could easily just harm yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And we didn't know what internet was. We didn't like devices, and a lot of people still don't to that extent. So like, I wonder if we went into it with these disciplines, like, hey, wow, I could do anything I wanted here. I could be invisible and really be the worst version of myself if I wanted to. So I need to be aware of that and not shun the thing. Maybe if I'm, like just some people don't drink because they're too susceptible to alcoholism. So knowing yourself is one thing, being mature about it, I think is one thing, but also just being aware of it and saying, okay, I need to exercise that discipline muscle. Like I need to be aware of these things. I mean, I may need to prepare myself. That's kind of where I think, like, as we're learning as a society, even where it comes to kids, right? Having them learn about this stuff and how to protect themselves and how to use it. I was talking to my son yesterday. I'm like, it'd be really cool if he's really into like, he's 10, he's into like business ideas and things like that. So it's this dichotomy of like, we keep him, all our kids away from those devices, but there's also a great power in the tool of that device. Yeah. Obviously we use that as what we do, right?
The two D's I think are like oil and water, discipline and digital. Like they're just, it's so hard. I do want to talk.
And it makes it harder because people are throwing things in your face. So then there's where marketers come in and businesses come in about, sometimes they leverage the vulnerabilities in people's mind, because now, unlike other things, you can actually just pop little temptations to people based on what they're most tempted by at any given time.
Yeah, you're maximizing their vulnerability.
And
to be honest with, I mean, it is. I want to talk a little bit about, because your co-author Jenny, she comes from she's a family therapist. She comes from more of a clinical. She sees a lot of like youth, and I'm sure adults as well, that struggle and the that are have been victims, or they deal with specific issues of depression and other things that come from their digital life. And I just wanted to start to say, I've seen, we've struggled a little bit with my son with his computer. We've noticed we've taken it out of the house, we put it back in, kind of trying to ease him into the idea that you have to have your own self-discipline. He's going to be 18 in a few years, and he's going to have to know how to self-discipline and how self-regulate himself. And we have open discussions about it. And one of the things that my wife and I, Jennifer, have noticed is that when we brought his computer back in, he's slightly less optimistic. He's more tired. Even though he's not playing late at night or anything, he's gets off at it and gets a good night's sleep. He just seems more. His brain seems more almost bruised, for the better word. Like you can tell, and the excitement in the regular life starts to get diminished a little bit. Like you can tell he's not quite, doesn't speak as much about things that are really exciting for him and fun. And we've noticed that. And I'm not a psychologist or I'm not an expert in that, but what I say is that exercise is a place in his brain that creates an ability for him to have more anxiety. And I know it's the dopamine and stuff, and I know it's getting, it's hitting, but it's actually energizing this area. So that part of his brain seems to function more because it's being exercised so much more.
That's right.
And so I would love to hear a little bit about, I'm sure you talk about that in the book at some level, and I'd like to hear a little bit about the perspectives from a professional.
It's a good segue into this last one that I just want to mention of how to stay human. Actually, there's one more after that, but it kind of touches on this. So let me just read this little section, and then we can riff on it a little bit. Staying human also means you don't always get what you want. Let's say you make a commitment to walk 5 miles a day. Sometimes you can do that because the weather is good. Sometimes you can't because of bad weather. Sometimes you have an injury that keeps you from walking. If you want someone to walk with you, they may not be available. You can't always have what you want when you want it, but sometimes you can. In the digital world, you can see what your friends are doing whenever you want. One therapist tells the story of a client who said, I want to meet new friends. I want to get to know more people, expand my social circle. The therapist asked, how could you do that? He said, I just need there to be one place where everyone is so I can go whenever I want. When you look on social media, something makes you think your friends are actually there. You're used to clicking a button and seeing friends, family, and your favorite celebrities. In the real world, that does not happen. There is no single physical space you could go to see all of your friends. Even if it were possible, they would not always be in that space whenever you decided to go.
Well, there was a television show that had that. Cheers.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody knew your name and all your friends were there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that doesn't exist, right?
They're
That's
always
not the real
there.
world.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like, yeah.
So I think to your point, I think we have conditioned ourselves and our kids in the last 10, 15 years that online, they can have whatever they want whenever they want. And what they're wanting, what we're wanting is those words, those dopamine hits, those words of encouragement, the satisfaction several times an hour instantly. And the reality is that's not how we work as human beings. I can't go out on the street and unless I'm Bono, which I saw last night at the Ryman. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Unless you're a rock star.
He was there last night?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
He
that.
was attending a show.
He attended a show?
Yeah.
Oh.
No.
Unless you're someone like that, which is really rare, but even that has limitations. You and I can't get up off of our chair, walk down the street and go, hey, Brad, great job. Brad, you're amazing. Oh, thumbs up, man. Hey, you look hot today. Oh my gosh.
Thanks,
how
Bob.
lucky you are.
Thank you, Bob.
That's what on the online world gives us.
Oh,
right?
stop.
There's no place you can go in the world and experience that amount of serotonin and love and dopamine and excitement or whatever it is that we get from that. But we've trained our brain, and so of course our kids are like, this online world, feels a lot better than having to go out into the real world where I have to make decisions. Where I have to work for things, where I can't always get what I want, where the world is full of mystery and paradox. This online world, it feels better for us, but it's not a healthy place to be. So I think that's what you're getting at is we're constantly wrestling with coming in and out of those worlds, and that's what you're seeing in your son. It's what I see in myself. It's like you're literally disembodied when you go into the virtual world. And that, I know that sounds crazy, but think about when, I was on a Zoom call yesterday with someone in Canada, and we were talking about this, and he lives on this beautiful 2-acre farm in Ontario, and he's converted this old barn into an office. And I was looking at his office, and it was a cool library. And as we were talking about this, I realized, like, I was in Ontario, I was with him, and my brain was going, and he's like, hey, look outside at this beautiful pond outside. Going in and out of those spaces, and going to different disembodied spaces where we're no longer like, I'm right here with you guys talking, looking at you in the eyes. is a phenomenon that we have never really experienced as human beings. This is kind of a new phenomenon. And our kids more and more are being immersed and their brains are going in it. And then we pull them out of it and go, shut your laptop, turn your phone away. And then we expect them just to be like readjust to the real world quickly. That's not it has to heal. We have to rethink how we're doing those and how we're creating those spaces and create a more humane environment with those level of ethics and thoughts and morals in place.
So you talked a lot about how we ourselves can address and work on our digital life, right? But when you're dealing with a child or a teenager who doesn't think there's anything that they need to adjust or changes, they don't see it. What do you think is the best way to approach, let's just say, teenagers or junior high kids in junior high who are starting to go up there, where you're starting to see that digital life is starting to affect their life? Like, what are some of the practical things that, or somebody else, maybe it's a spouse that is dealing with stuff? Because I know I've heard a lot of like millennials that are gamers that their marriage really struggles because they're literally playing games till midnight every night versus being with their spouse. And I know it's a big deal. Like, I see it now in the workplace. I see it with other people, like adults. And so what are the things that, if you have a loved one that you live with and that you see this is having an adverse effect, that you can help with?
Can I tell you my own personal experience?
Yeah.
And how what we have done, what we've experienced, and what we've implemented in our family?
Yeah.
And I'll just read it from the book. Bob and his wife have 3 children, almost 7 years between each. And in effect, each grew up in a different era of the internet revolution. One is a digital native. One spent most of her life only knowing screen life, and his oldest remembers life before and after. It gives him a unique perspective on parenting, the issue of screen time, and how children develop relationships with the digital world. Through the years, they've seen the good and the bad effects of screen time, mobile phones, and gaming. There are many things he would have done differently if he had known then what he knows now, but that's how life works. They saw their millennial-age son grow up in his early years without the existence of social media or internet-enabled cell phones. Then, as he entered his teen years, these things began to proliferate and become commonplace. He learned to navigate a new and evolving world that was just beginning to make massive shifts. He and his peers discovered things like texting, Facebook, and chat roulette. Yes, there were lessons learned and mistakes made. This was the generation that learned the hard way that what goes on the internet or social media stays on the internet or social media. Their middle child is an older Gen Z member that barely made it as a late 90s baby. The internet and screen life was native to her, but still in its infancy in her younger years. She doesn't remember a time without it, but also grew up alongside its early evolution. The development and growth of iPhones, social media platforms, and e-commerce was something she witnessed and participated in as she grew up. She learned how to play Animal Crossings and research her homework in front of a screen. Their youngest of the 3 was born after Facebook had launched, and by the time he was able to walk and talk, he knew how to get online, use an iPad, and make his way around the digital landscape. Memes are his native language, and hanging out with friends sometimes means being on a group chat or Discord channel together. Since Bob works in tech and has for most of his career, his family has always had multiple screens connected to the internet. So how do we manage this? Bob's family agrees to no screens during family meals. Also, screens and phones are put away before bed. Bob still struggles with his connection to the digital world. It's his job and the focus of his life work. However, he's learned to regularly disconnect, spend time in nature to rejuvenate and cleanse his mindset. And when given the opportunity to connect with someone online or in face-to-face, he always chooses the latter. This wasn't always the case, but he's getting better, he hopes. So for me, I would just say there's some basic parental things, Brad, that if we have the guts and the willpower, it's not that difficult. You just limit their time, their controls that we have. And it's the same exact thing as Ken was referring to. You wouldn't tell your son or your daughter, hey, Dad, can I have access to the gun so I can go outside and shoot some bottles? Of course not. I mean, I mean, I'm sure there are people that live out in the country, maybe.
I mean, we're in Tennessee.
But most
we're in Tennessee,
healthy
so.
people are like, no, you are going to take some classes. I'm going to be with you. We're going to go to a shooting range and not to your X amount of old. The phone has to be treated the same way. We never, ever allow our kids to have it in their room, to go to bed with it anywhere near them. It's 10 o'clock, bedtime, whatever it is, phones go downstairs. When friends sleep over, you will not have phones upstairs. I don't care what you do at home with your family. Your phone goes downstairs. The rules are home. No phones at dinner table. We have a rule. Some people call it strict. No video games during the week.
Yeah, we do the same thing.
School week. It's schoolwork. You tell your friends, sorry, you're not going to have that temptation to skimp on your homework so you can get to video games. You can play weekends all you want, but not during the week.
Not only that, but it's probably a forced. My perspective is that forces balance where there's a huge propensity to be imbalanced, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just like anything else, anything out of hand is or anything too much of anything is not a good thing. And so like we have those. I mean, you have that in the way you eat, right? I would eat cake all day if I could.
Right.
Like I would definitely do that. If I could do that, I would do that.
Do you
I put those boundaries on.
going back to this, my son's homework is all done online.
Yeah.
He has the
Same.
school gives him a Chromebook, and everything's done through a digital device for the most part. Do you think the device by itself, just being no matter, let's say I'm editing a video, right? Let's say I'm working on a project. Maybe I'm at work doing a spreadsheet. Do you think that that digital connection that I'm having also puts additional challenges on my life that I'm not aware of versus, because we mostly talked about the metaverse, the social aspect, the relationships online, all that stuff, right? The connection.
Life in general.
Just screen life in general. I mean, do you think that alone is, if we didn't have social media, if we didn't have anything, we just went on there, did spreadsheets and edited videos and did our work or whatever, or did homework, do you think that we would have still some issues? Do you feel? I mean, I'm not.
I think the studies are still out on that. I definitely think, again, it's a bigger discussion. It's kind of like all technology is an extension of who we are, right? So we talked about this last time. It's like the wheel's an extension of the foot, the hammer's an extension of the arm. Computers are an extension of your brain, and my opinion is that the internet is an extension of your nervous system. So if you carry that all the way through, you could say, are cars harmful to us, and do they affect us? Well, was it natural to sit in that position for that long to the human race before cars? No, it wasn't. Like, we walked everywhere, right? So, but cars have given us travel. They've given us the suburbs. They've given us
Supply chains.
They've given us everything, right? But physiologically, they have changed us, right?
Yeah.
They have, we could go down that road, right? So, same thing. I think the same thing with screens. It's probably changed the way our eyes process information into our brains. It has affected our nervous system in some ways. Did the goods outweigh it? And can we learn how to, build the technology to where, maybe the light doesn't affect our eyes as much, maybe higher resolution backlit screens, maybe it's a better way. I can't answer like the pros and cons, but all technology affects us physiologically in some way. You can never ever say it's just a tool. That's a cop out.
I've thought about the same thing, and I wonder, I don't know, are there things that you can do? Because we have in school is the same way. Like, what's the alternative? Like, I wonder why. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. There's things you could do to remove that.
There's something I've been doing, which I've been trying to just feel. When I get off screens and get off tech, doesn't matter what it is, working, just stuff. If I go do something that takes some more physical effort, where there's motor skills involved and different motor skills, I find that is so soothing to me. Like, it helps my mind, it relieves the stress, and it's the same thing. It's like if you sit behind a computer all day versus walking, and let's say you have a manufacturing job where you have to be on your feet and doing things, or you're serving and you're on your feet and doing all these different tasks that use your motor skills. There's something about that your body, I think, it's not just the exercise, it's something else, that your body connects with things in a more tangible way. Like, you're feeling things differently. There's more feeling and textures and things, and you're exciting all of those senses that a lot of times with digital we don't excite, right? Yeah. We don't use. But I definitely feel that's, to me, I've noticed it's more therapeutic for me to do that than it is other stuff. Like, I might be moving my hands a little bit more. I might be, but it's when I'm in the digital realm, there's something that lacks. It doesn't give back.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Is at the beginning is like, as being human means you have limitations. In what does analog? There's a new book out. A guy I just talked to and interviewed. His name is David Sachs, and he has a book that's coming out next week called "The Future Is Analog." He wrote a book back in 2016 called "The Revenge of Analog," which is a great book. But it all points to what you're talking about, Brad, and that is when we have hobbies, when we have things that are tactile, when we have things that are non-digital, what are we doing? We're taking time and effort to process and do things that take focus and attention, right? The digital world doesn't really give us that. It doesn't give us the opportunity for our full bodies to focus, to get in flow and engage in something that is real and tangible. And that's what you're talking about, is when I get a book and I open it and I flip the pages and I read it and I feel it and I sit down in my chair with a candle going on one side and the light on the book. I just like, oh, it's wonderful, right? That's something that's a full body immersion experience.
I'm feeling this book right now. Oh, I like the soft touch cover.
Matte touch.
Wow.
Yeah. But what's happening there? It's that we're having to give our full attention, body, mind, even spirit, into something that is enriching to us. And that's something that we haven't been able to fully get in the digital world. Yeah.
Do you have any other things, suggestions in the book that?
Well, you know what I would love to also on that point is, okay, as professionals in this industry, what can we do to not hurt the situation, but improve the situation, right? So you're talking to a bunch of marketers, right, that use technology and websites and all kinds of things.
Yeah,
we're leveraging psychology in business, right?
Yeah, we're so fighting for people's attention online.
And I would say many leverage those things that are temptations for people. So how do we put boundaries on what we do to be part of the solution and not the problem, and still do business?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think people like Tristan Harris at the Center for Humane Technology is thinking a lot about this. And this is a whole, I think, another episode. But to your point, a few things. Make the experience that you're giving or creating or wanting to provide as human and as natural as possible. So, for instance, one of the things he talks about a lot is putting a limit. So, for instance, on social media, putting a limit on how many times somebody can forward something. That's a problem, right? Like, I can just click on anything and repost it, forward it. So if I create things that are, I know if I create this meme or I use this language, people will repost this a bazillion times.
That would be interesting. Huh?
Yeah. Like,
I mean, physical world limits on what is unlimited.
You can repost
self-imposed,
but you have to go in and you have to take in some extra steps. This is already been reposted 3 times, 5 times. So if you want to repost it or you want your content to be reposted, then it's not just one click of a button. Maybe it's 2 clicks that you have to take place. Putting a 2-click repost, just simple things like that.
So putting like reasonable limits on the unlimited.
Putting reasonable limits on the
unlimited.
We're
in e-commerce, and I was thinking in my head, like, what if should we shut down websites at 9 p.m.? Like, should websites close? Right? To impose some limits.
Yeah,
I don't think our clients would like that. But.
Making the content that we create for our clients truly enriching, run it through the filter of your own ethics. I think that's the main thing. I do think in
marketing flows that's important, because a lot of times we all know this feeling where a marketer will find your fear, play on that fear, leverage all these things.
Scarcity. It's like, it's the number one thing. It's like, how can we create anxiety?
And then, then stacking value and all these things.
How does big tech though manage? They have to be the ones that will implement some of this stuff. And when you're dealing with platforms who their whole goal is to get people on their platforms, keep them on their platforms, keep them entertained for as long as possible, and they have stockholders and shareholders and boards, and they have to meet certain financial criterias, there doesn't seem to be any incentive to do what you just talked about whatsoever. It's actually anti-incentive to what their business model is.
Yeah, ethical capitalism. I mean, there's a whole movement right now, especially the generations coming up, of people who are capitalists and realize, like, we've got to make money and turn a profit, but we're not going to fall into these other traps, and we're going to do it in ethical, social good ways. And I think there are ways to do that. And I think what we're seeing Facebook implode now. We're seeing potentially Twitter going through some crazy things right now. I think people are waking up and going, we want something better. It's not an either or situation. I don't think it's you make people the product and you hook their attention and their time on site, or you're going to fail. I think you see things like Substack, for instance. Substack is exploding. It's a slower growth, but basically saying, hey, you're a writer and you have good content. Let's let the best content bubble up to the top. Oh, and by the way, you can charge people to subscribe to your content, and that's okay. You can have that. You can make money on that. We'll just take a tiny little piece, and you can charge whatever you want. So you have Substacks of alternative news voices that people are going, I'll charge you $5 a month or $4 a month or $10 a month. You subscribe to my blog, my Substack, and I'll give you quality content. To me, that's the way in the future. That's the way forward. It's not a free-for-all of how can we hook and put people into boxes and create drama and us versus them to keep people's, eating popcorn and paying attention. I think people were waking up to that and saying, we can do better than that. We can create platforms, apps that are profitable, but also create a better human experience. And I think what it causes us to do is we have to think harder. We have to look at ourselves, and we can't keep doing the same thing. It's like I say, it's like you hear marketers all the time. Okay, here's how you create scarcity, and here's how you create countdowns. And you say there's only X amount left, and there's apps that plug in and go, hey, your sale price is going to go away if you don't go buy it in the next hour. That's all anxiety creating, playing off of people's emotions. We can do better than that.
Yeah, it's a balance of all those things.
Yeah, for sure. Guys, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the book.
Yeah, proud of you.
Thank you. Good. Really proud. I know this is writing a book is labor of love. Where can they get the book?
They can get it on Amazon right now. It's on Amazon.
How much is it?
It's Amazon, and I don't know when we're going to release this. It's $19.99, but it just went down to $15. They put it on sale. We don't have any control over that.
And there's only limited amounts left, though, right? So you got to get it now.
You got to get it now,
yes,
or it's going to go up to $50.
That's definitely true. Yeah, well, I mean, it's on sale for only limited time on sale.
Honestly, I don't know how long that is. They just
is it because of its ranking?
Yeah, I think it did really good the first week, so they will say, oh, let's drop the price to get even more volume. And then when it stops
You
selling,
guys were
it
a
might
number
go,
one new release. Is that right?
we're number one new release in our psychology section for about a week and a half. But it's called Our Digital Soul, Collective Anxiety and Media Trauma and a Path Forward, Path Toward Recovery. You can go to ourdigitalsoul.com if you want to know more, or you can just search it up on Amazon.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I would love to get into how you wrote this thing.
Yeah, maybe next time we can talk
Yeah.
about writing books in general and why that's a good thing.
Yeah.
All that.
Awesome.
All right,
You guys have a great day.
Until
right.
next time.
See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.